welcome to you all this afternoon to our CPD 3. This is actually our last session that we're going to be covering for this academic year. So if you're new to our partnership or new to working with us, a really warm welcome. If you're not, great to see old friends back again, and hope that you find it really supportive and helpful to go through this particular session that we've organised today. So we're going to have a look at the do some introductions, and thank you so much for putting in the chat bar your name and your email address, just so that I can send off the presentation to you straight after the meeting. We're going to just look at some brief primary partnership updates, part of our primary partnership website. And then the main part of the meeting is to be looking at the using our BCU IT assessment tracker and looking at those assessment points as part of a moderation and standardisation process. So just to make sure you're confident and happy with how to use the tracker and how to inform those judgments, particularly if you have got PGs on their school-based training 2, or you've got your BA Year 2s who are also on their school-based training 2, or equally if you have our BA Year 1s who've just completed their part 1 of their placement with you and will be starting their part 2 placement with you in May, and then future diary dates as well, but that's part of the process. Thanks, Kath. You want to go to the next slide?
Doesn't want to do it, right?
It will. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Perfect. That's, I think we can go to the next slide as well, because I think we've got we've said welcome to that too. Thanks, Kath. So on this next slide, we're going to be looking at just some primary partnership updates for you. So if you are in touch with your university tutor, you might notice that they've got a banner that they put at the bottom of their signature, and that's just a quick access to our primary partnership website. I have put this into the chat for you, the link, because it doesn't seem to want to work on this particular presentation. So please check on the link, and this will take you directly to our primary partnership website, which holds all of our key documentation. So it's got all the information there you need for your BA Year 1, 2 and your PGC. And just to point out, on the placement documents and briefing section, we have actually hyperlinked that information, so it's easy. If you just click on BA Year 1, it'll take you to the BA Year 1 information. If you go to BA Year 2, etc., it'll take you straight to that BA Year 2 information, so it just saves you having to scroll down. We've also added our subject-specific prompts on the partnership website. We've also included lesson observation feedback templates, so when you're coming to observe your associate teacher in whichever year group that you're working with, you have both the lesson observation for a core or a foundation subject, and then we've also got our phonics lesson observation feedback templates. So if you are observing phonics and you have got somebody in, I think a lot of our PGs are in their school-based training too, they have a Key Stage 1 placement, please can you use the phonics template to help to support that feedback and that process. And all of that information is on our Mentor CPD and support section. Together with this particular presentation, I've just waiting to get an OK and approval from our website team, but actually I've already uploaded this presentation to the partnership website as well. Thanks, Kath. So just some information which has come from our mentor working group. We thought this would be quite helpful for you. Our mentors have said that they wanted to have sort of an update or information that they can tell if they had a top, not a top 10 checklist, but key documents that are to support them on the placement on their school-based training process. So what we've done here is just put in the slide here. You'll see all of the key documents that are going to help you as a mentor to support your our associate teacher on their placement. So we've got the school-based training handbook, which is relevant for whether you're in Year 1, Year 2, or you have your PGCE. They also, our associate teachers should be sharing with you their progress journal via their OneDrive folder. I've just been in a school today, and one of the mentors said that actually their associate teacher hadn't shared that OneDrive folder. So please nag them and make sure that they do share that with you, because that's important for you to see previous iterations of their school-based journal, if applicable, and also that you can share key documentation as well that's relevant to their particular course. Important for you as well is our BCU IT curriculum. And I've just put in a link here, which I'll put in the chat bar shortly when I've just stopped talking. We've got a kind of a PowerPoint presentation for you that just talks about our IT curriculum, and if that's going to be helpful to you to be able to understand how that works, how it works in conjunction with our associate teachers' subject-specific development journal. So it's how those two are married together. I hope that will be a helpful guide for you as well. Obviously, we've got our BCU assessment tracker, which we're going to be looking at today with Kath, and that is housed in the Associate Teachers Progress Journal. So hopefully you've been able to scroll down and see a copy of that, and that's where you're going to be looking at sort of making those judgments on progress for future meetings. We've got the subject-specific prompts, which together give you support if you're giving feedback on a particular subject, and those are, I put the link right down at the bottom of the placement and documents briefings. If you can't access that link, don't worry, I'll put all of these links into the chat bar shortly. I'm not clever enough to multitask and put them in at the same time, so but I will put those in for you so you've got access to that information. And then just to identify, we have these templates here to support you with giving your lesson observation feedback, or to take when you're doing your weekly observations of our associate teachers. And to help you, and this again has come from our mentor partnership, we've put in some exemplars of what that feedback might look like. So it will support you in looking at the amount or the type of content that you need to add into your observation feedback. And I've have had comments from mentors that I'm working with who are fairly new to being a mentor, and they found this particularly helpful just to get an idea of what kind of language is used and how to support the associate teacher effectively. And just another thing to mention too, that our associate teachers, until they have their review meeting 2, should be using our BCU lesson planning pro forma, so that all lessons need to be planned. They are delivering need to be planned on this lesson pro forma, because it helps them to understand that sequencing of planning and how to make sure that their lesson content is appropriate for the children that they're teaching. And I know whilst we are thinking about workload, as I said, that will be reviewed at review meeting 2, and a decision made whether that continues and whether our associate teachers are able to use school planning pro formas. Thank you. Can you just go to the next slide, please, Kath? Okay, so just a quick update on where we are with our school-based training at the moment. So we've got our BA Year 1 associate teachers who are currently just doing their Tuesday visits, and that will change when they come to have their block placement again, which starts the week beginning the 8th of May. And to support that particular placement, if you have got BA Year 1s, we'll be having a further placement and a mentor briefing, which Kath or Mark will be delivering on the 25th or the 27th of April. And again, I've put those links up onto the Primary Partnership website already. They will then have the dates for their review meetings and progress meetings are shared there as well. BA Year 2s are currently on their Block 2 SBT, which we call School-Based Training 2 placement. Hope they're going well. If you've got any school-based training BAs in your schools at the moment, and their review meetings are coming up next week, and then they've got their progress meeting on the 27th of March. And just to please note that, and I'm sure your BA Year 2s, if you have got BA Year 2s, have mentioned to you, but they have an additional university callback day this Friday, the 10th of March, and they should have shared that with you. And then our PGCE associate teachers are also on their school-based training too, and again have a similar dates to our BA Year 2. So their review meeting will be taking place next week, and then they'll have their progress meeting the week beginning the 27th of March. And just a heads up, if you have got PGCE associate teachers in your school, that the school-based training 3, the mentor briefings will be taking place on the 18th or the 20th of April. And just very conscious that straight after Easter or return from an Easter break. And the MS Teams links are already again up on our website. And when I've finished my section, I'll make sure that you've got all of that information in the chat bar. Just very quickly, Kath, to the next slide. As many of you might be aware, if you're not, if you're new to working with us this academic year, we are due an inspection. It's imminent. If we don't get the call tomorrow, then it will be, we've been told it's going to be in the spring term. So just bearing in mind with the teacher strikes next week, it may not be tomorrow, but it could be. But so we know that within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we are going to be inspected. It's likely to be based on our inspection from last year that they will come to schools possibly on a Tuesday. So we'll get the call on the Wednesday, all being well, and we'll have time to be able to organise that visit to the school. We don't choose the schools, inspectors choose the school. But as soon as we are able to, find out which schools they'd like to come into, we will get in touch with yourselves and make sure that you are supported, your head teacher, you as lead mentors and mentors, and also obviously support our associate teachers as well to make sure that you all feel supported under the process. They will be asking about our IT curriculum. This was very much linked to our inspection last year, where they felt that our schools didn't really understand our curriculum because, quite frankly, we hadn't shared it sufficiently with you all. So it will be a case of just making sure that you feel confident about using our documentation, and all of our training has been linked specifically to developing that understanding of our curriculum as well. As I said, university tutors will support you all in the setting and make sure that you are fully aware of the process and how the visit will go and what the plans are, etc. But we're just to say, I think it's really important to say this, because sometimes when we hear the word Ofsted, I think our hackles either, we all go, oh, Ofsted. Actually, we're really proud of our partnership and our working relationship with you. And I hope for those of you that have worked with us this year, we have tried to steer you through our primary partnership website to make sure that you are more aware of our processes and documentation. So we do listen to you, and we do want to make sure that we continue that strong relationship that we have with you. So, thank you. If they do decide to come to one of your schools, we'll be there to support you. Thanks, Kath. I think it's over to you on the next slide. Great, thank you. I think you're on mute, Kath.
I was just going to say, have you got anything in your chat bar that you want to answer or address before I start?
Let's have a look. I don't think there's anything come up. Let me just quickly check. No, but I will just pop in the links that I've just been mentioning very quickly to people. As I said, thank you for popping in your email address. I'll be able to send this presentation off to you straight after the meeting. So thanks for that. Great, thanks, Kath. Over to you.
Thanks, Anne. So one of the items on today's agenda, as Anne explained, was to look at that assessment of your associate teachers during their time with you. So we thought what we've done is we've brought together some of those materials that are there to support you with that. That can be found in the progress journal, and we'll talk through those, some of the key points, and just to say, and if you have any questions, please do just pop them in the chat and then we can address those as well. So the purpose of progress meetings, meeting 2 outlined in the progress journal. We're at that point. I mean, Anne's gone over the dates, but we've got year 2s out at the moment, just about to do their review meeting 2, and then that will be followed by their progress meeting 2 at the end of their training with you. And then we've got PGCE associate teachers out in schools as well at the moment, and similar for them, review meeting 2s coming up progress meeting 2s coming up. So we have kind of focused on those particular assessment points here to support you with that. And then obviously they will go on to those review meetings, and the PGs will go on to review and progress meeting 3s towards the end of the year. You'll also get year 1s coming in May, and they will be at progress meeting 1. So I know it possibly sounds a little bit confusing, but there are different expectations at each of those assessment points. It's about making judgments, completing those review and progress meeting assessment reports, making those judgments using the assessment tracker and looking at those grade descriptors and what do those statements mean. If we have got time, we'll go on to some scenarios there. I think we'll keep an eye on time. I can't move on now. Oh, hang on. There we go. Right, so making accurate judgments is obviously sort of the main purpose of this. How do we know that those judgments are accurate and that those associate teachers are on track to make good progress and gain their QTS at the end of the course? What we need to do is ensure that we're using all of the available evidence so that we can ensure those judgments are robust. Ensure all levels of pupil progress judgments, targets, report comments and final grades are aligned with evidence, and be able to make those accurate judgments using all the available evidence to complete midpoint, so those review meetings and those final progress meetings. And obviously our aim for inspection is to satisfy Ofsted, who will also look at the accuracy of our partnership assessment of associate teachers teaching. So the quality of their teaching should be judged by the impact on progress and learning over time, the context and the content of their teaching. And we do really want to see those associate teachers planning and delivering those sequences of lessons so that they're building upon sort of prior knowledge and recognising where children need to get to in order to meet those age-related expectations as well. So it's not judged, but they're not judged in isolation. So there is a full range of evidence to use to support our judgments, and including marking as well. All assessment documentation and feedback should reference the 6 BCU key themes to track progress against these. We use those to identify strengths in an associate teacher's practice and also to determine areas for additional development. So what does that associate teacher's performance look like? So we've got on the tracker 3 columns, and it's progressive. So we go from working towards to working at and then working beyond. And this is for BAs a 3-year process, and for PG associate teachers, this is a developmental process over the year that they're with us. So if we just look at the themes as well, these are what we're judging, making our judgments against. So, and these are underpinned by the teacher standards, but what we don't do is judge against or make those judgments against teacher standards until the very end of training, when we look at teacher standards at that point for QTS. These are all underpinned by teacher standards. So we've got theme A, which is looking at that critical inquiry and research informed practice. And it's really marrying up the two things. What are they doing within our curriculum? What reading and current research are they looking at in their module learning that they can actually then use to inform their practice in their school-based training as well. It will also include them engaging with and talking about and developing their subject knowledge, so their subject audits is part of that as well. And also we'd really like to see that coming through on their critical incidences, which they will put together and talk about it at each of those assessment points. Then theme B, which is very much about that sort of effective behaviour management in the classroom, high expectations and that awareness of pupil wellbeing. Theme C is very much focused on subject knowledge and developing that subject knowledge, so the core curriculum and foundation subjects, and the associated sort of specific pedagogy that will impact on pupil progress across that curriculum. Theme D is using that knowledge of how pupils learn so that they plan and they assess learning effectively to ensure that all pupils make progress. Theme E is looking at that adaptive teaching approaches, so meeting the needs of that range of children in your classrooms, including children with special educational needs and disabilities and pupils with English as an additional language. And then finally, theme F is looking at professional behaviours and how that associate teacher contributes effectively to the wider life of the school. Okay, so working towards, so if we were to look at the first column in the assessment tracker, where pupils are learning and making progress, but not always evident over time. It must, this is very much about showing an awareness of and beginning to develop a knowledge of, rather than specifically teaching at this point. So if you've had year one BAs with you, you'll know that their first part has very much been about sort of immersing themselves into the classroom, building relationships with the children and supporting you in that learning that's taking place, and also them observing practice and having those discussions with expert colleagues in school. All associate teachers must demonstrate working towards practice in most of those key themes. Part 2, consistently high quality practice in personal and professional conduct. And really, at this point, they are acting on advice and feedback most of the time, and they're just being very proactive, and they're really engaged in what you're doing in the classroom. Working at, and this is where there is that expectation to plan and teach, so pupils learning in progress, that again, that's evident over time. At least 75% of statements are working at overall. Associate teachers demonstrating establishing practice in most of the BCU key themes, and working towards judgments to be scrutinised. Again, we expect that part 2, consistently high quality practice, and now they really are consistently acting on that advice and feedback on their planning and their teaching. And then we have the working beyond. So this is where we would be looking at that review and progress meeting 3s. Pupils learning progress over time is good or better, at least. So when we want associate teachers to complete their training in order to gain that QTS, there should be at least 50% of these statements in this final column highlighted as working beyond overall. So they must demonstrate working beyond practice in most of the BCU 6 key themes. At this point, there should be no working towards judgments outstanding. So if there is, they really need to be scrutinised at that point. Part 2, again, consistently high and have continued to act upon advice and feedback consistently. So if we go to the tracker, as we said, this is really just to keep, to make sure that we are making accurate judgments against that developmental continuum, if you like. It provides an accurate picture of where the trainee is at the assessment point. So whether it's a review meeting or a progress meeting, but it also can help you provide a clear picture for future targets to be set. So once you celebrated what the associate teacher has achieved and is demonstrating consistently in their practice, it's at this point where we can look at some clear targets for them to move forward as well. Okay. Tell me if you want me to stop at all, Anne, or do you want me just to keep going? Have you got any questions or anything?
Just to say, Catherine, I'm very aware that this is kind of a bit of a small typeface. I have put the links for the assessment tracker into the chat bar, so if people are able to or want to have a look at that as well, they've got that access. I've put all of the other links into the chat bar as well. But please comment if there's anything. I'm here to sort of support whilst Kath's talking, but just very conscious of time, Kath. So yeah, great, thank you.
Fine. So this is what the tracker looks like. So we've just shown you sort of snapshots of the working towards or the working at and the working beyond. But in the progress journal, this is what you'll see. So key theme A, using that research. And this is something that we're really keen to really push as well in terms of using their reading, using their research to inform what they're doing in the classroom, and having those conversations as well. And maybe go to their development journals so that, what have you done at university? What has the recommended reading been for this particular aspect of your practice? So the working towards is about that support with expert colleagues, looking at relevant research and policy, looking at reflecting on lessons and making links to that theory and that practice, looking at subject audits. So they do have English and maths subject audits and action plans in place, as do they have a really comprehensive science audit that they need to go through and achieve. So have those conversations with them and ask them, how does this link to, or, is there areas of your subject knowledge that you feel that you need to develop? And how can we help with that at the same time? Looking at resources and reading, perhaps you can recommend they go somewhere. I know lots of schools have recommended reading and research that they do as collaboratively within phases or across the staff. So, getting them really involved in understanding the importance of that, which underpins sort of their knowledge and their understanding once they're in school as well. But what we don't want is for them to see those as two completely separate things, that what we do at university is very different to what we do in school. Of course, they're very linked. And as Anne said earlier on, it's making those links really clear to them as well. Just to say that at the end of each tracker page, or at the end of each theme, I should say, that there are the teacher standards. We don't use these to formatively assess. As I said earlier, these are only referred to at the point of QTS recommendation. So that would be for BA Year 3 associate teachers at the end of their final practice, or PGCE associate teachers at the end of theirs. Okay. Theme C. So theme B was behaviour. We've come to theme C. We just wanted to highlight here that it says, please refer to the subject-specific development journal. Each associate teacher has a subject-specific development journal, which they carry with them throughout the 3 years. In there is detailed curriculum. So as Anne was talking about, our BCU curriculum. So what have they done in year 1 in science, for example, and then again in year 2, and then again in year 3. It's very much led by learn that and learn how to statements. So the learn that is very much what we do with them in university and through their module learning. And then the learn how to is when they come into school, and how do they put what they have learned into practice effectively. So certainly those that subject specific development journal should be shared with you as well in that school folder. If it hasn't been shared or you haven't seen it, if you're not quite sure what it is I'm talking about, go back to your associate teacher and ask them if you can have a look at it. You know, what have you been doing in science at university? How can we help you put that into practice in the classroom as well? And they will also have a professional studies development journal. So for the different modules they do in professional studies. But I think, Anne, I'm right in saying that this is actually at the bottom of the subject-specific development journal for PGCE associate teachers, but BAs will have 2 separate development journals. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I'm just going to pop into the chat bar. I'm sorry if I keep bombarding the chat bar with information as well, but people can then come back and have a look at it, can't they? So actually, yes, so the subject-specific development journal, again, is on the Primary Partnership website. Is actually under placement documents and briefings. So I'll put that link in again, so you can have a look in case your associate teacher hasn't shared that, but also make sure that they do share that with you, because that's a key document for part of your weekly mentor meetings as well. Perhaps give us a thumbs up. Anybody, you know, if it's anybody that has shared that, have they managed to share that document with you? Or are you aware of that document? Just if you just go to the top of there's a little, you can raise your hand, or if you click on the raise your hand, or you can kind of put a thumbs up if you've got, just to make sure people are actually able to have got sight of that. But as I said, if you haven't, please contact your associate teacher, and if they say, oh, there's a problem, then again, thank you so much for that response. Make sure that you've informed the university tutor as well, because they can also expedite that to make sure they can see that. Great, thank you everybody. Thanks, Kath.
All right, thank you. Then we've got key theme D here, which is looking at planning and assessing. As Anne mentioned earlier, we do expect all of our associate teachers to use the BCU planning performer for any lessons that they're planning and teaching until at least review meeting 2, which year 2s and PGs will be coming up to that point in the next week or so. Depending on what that planning looks like and how that associate teacher is performing at that point, if they're well on track and you're really happy with their planning is detailed, they're planning for you know, they're identifying prior learning, they're identifying sort of possible misconceptions, so anticipating things that might come up during the lesson, that they've got strong subject knowledge for teaching, they understand sort of those effective pedagogical sort of approaches to teaching, and that's all coming through in their planning and their adaptive teaching, so they're beginning to adapt for that range of need within your classroom. Then there is that, at that point, there is an opportunity for negotiation as to whether we want them to continue using that planning performer or whether they can begin to use your own school planning documentation. Because obviously planning is you know, that provides a real structure for thinking through and rehearsing those lessons. What we don't want is to move towards school planning because it's perhaps easier and it's less work, which obviously is a concern. But what we don't want to lose at that point is the quality. So the quality of the planning and the quality of the provision for the children. So that would be very much a conversation at that point during that review meeting with the UT, with you as class teachers or lead mentors and the associate teacher. Okay, so assessment points. So as we said, review meeting 1, this is year 1 will have just completed their review meeting 1. So it's just really a reminder of where we're at. PGCEs will have completed review meeting 1 and progress meeting 1 in their first school-based training placements. Year 2s now will be moving on to review meeting 2 and progress meeting 2. Year 1s will move on to progress meeting 2 in May when as part of their part 2, but I'll come back to that then. So at this point, they should have demonstrated competence in most of those key themes at the working towards level. Okay, and that would mean they are very much still on track for QTS at the end of their training. Progress meeting, oh, didn't move. Okay, so now we're moving on to for year 2s and the PGCEs on their school basement training 2s, their review meeting 2, which is the midpoint. So using that tracker and looking at sort of their overall performance to date and making a best fit judgment against those key themes on the tracker. So once you've started highlighting those and recording that, then we can have a look at that and make a best fit judgment. So what we want to see at this point at review meeting 2, who are on track, should be really demonstrating their competence in 75% of each of those 6 themes at the working towards level. Now, of course, some may have now some highlighted statements in working at as well, and that's great. But certainly we want at least 75% in that first column, that working towards column. Anyone requiring improvement would be demonstrating their competence in less than 75% of each of those themes that working towards, and that perhaps they're not fully engaged or responding to advice and feedback. And in that case, at this point, at this review meeting 2, then we would put a rapid improvement target in place to support them as they move into the final part of that placement. So it'd be really looking at that tracker and identifying where those gaps are and what we need them to do, really focused practice in order to get them back on track. And that can be done at that review meeting in discussion between yourselves, the UT and the associate teacher as well. Then obviously we're working towards progress meeting 2, which takes place at the end of that school-based training. So again, this is now making the judgment of their overall performance and making a best fit judgment, again, based against those key themes. But at this point, they should have now demonstrated their competence in all elements in all of those themes at the working towards level. And of course, elements in the working at level. If they haven't by then, it will be a failed school-based training 2. So if they've got, and do you want to just explain this with this, because we felt there was a discrepancy, weren't we? The 75% is very much, do you want to just?
Yeah, because I actually, Kath and I had a conversation earlier. We both felt this was a little bit, we didn't feel it was very clear. So, but I did speak to a colleague, and after speaking to the colleague, I think it made a lot of sense. So when they come to the progress meeting 2, for an associate teacher who wasn't at the review meeting, wasn't meeting 75% of the coverage in the and the themes and the key themes, and then they come to this meeting still not having that 75% coverage within those key themes, that means that they haven't met the expectations for this particular for school-based training 2. So that's where it would be a fail. But obviously, if you go back one step, at that review meeting, if they weren't on track, a rapid improvement target would have been put in place as well. So they would have had that support to continue to develop. But if they come to this progress meeting still not having that 75% coverage in that working towards, then it's a failed school-based training 2. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. So we're really looking for all of that working towards and some in working at, aren't we, really, for a trainee, for a associate teacher to be well on track. And I don't think we would be doing them justice at that point, because actually, you know, the expectation in year 3 becomes greater, the percentage of teaching, you know, at this point they should be up to 60% teaching, and then that's going to only increase up to 70 and 80% towards the end. So I think it's at that point that, you know, we wouldn't be doing them a justice if we did sort of say, yep, you can go through, because it is just going to be more challenging anyway. Obviously, any of these situations will be discussed with your UT. So, you know, there's that professional discussion that does take place to support you and to support the associate teacher at that point. Okay. And then moving on, we've got review meeting 3. So this would be school-based training 3 for PGCE associate teachers. And at this point, we want all of those demonstrating their competencies in all of the themes at the working at level, and obviously working within that working beyond level as well. And again, if there's working towards level, if there are, do not demonstrate all of that in the working towards, and at least 75% in that working at the progress, their progress is judged as requiring improvements. Again, rapid improvement target will be put into place to support them as we go through towards the final progress meeting 3, where we would expect all of the working at and working beyond can be deemed to have made very good progress in readiness for their ECT year. So again, it's about how proficient and how competent are they at that point to go again to that next stage of training. Again, if any of those working towards statements are not met at that point, that would be deemed as a failed placement. So what happens? A failing associate teacher, if they fail to meet those minimum levels of practice expected, defined by the BCU key themes by the end of their placement, the quality of their teaching over time is weak, and that those pupils, learners, or groups of learners are only making limited or inadequate progress, it is deemed as a failed placement. What will happen is that there are then several options for that associate teacher. They will be offered a resit with support in place, etc., etc. So that's something that, as a university, we would then make those next decisions for the individual associate teacher. What do we need to look at? How can we make sure that our judgments against those BCU key themes are accurate? Use the evidence that's available. There's plenty of evidence. There's a whole range from lesson observations, observation tasks that we give them. So particularly in year 1, where those associate teachers have had observation of particular lessons or curriculum areas to complete. Look at their progress journal. Are they being proactive? Are they engaged in what they're being asked to do? Look at the planning. Are they planning sequences of learning? And that's what we do want to see coming through, a sequence of maths, a sequence of English, of science, and some of the foundation subjects. We do know that in that limited time that they're in school with you, 5 weeks, they may not have the opportunity to teach a particular aspect of the curriculum. So it may be history rather than geography, or RE rather than music, or something like that. And we accept that because of the timetable constraints, but where there is an opportunity for them to be able to plan and deliver a sequence of learning, that's what we really want to encourage them to do, because that's where we're going to see that the progress those pupils are making. How do they evaluate their lessons? So are they evaluating it? Are they actually looking at the impact on pupil progress? So make that the focus of those discussions before and after a lesson, whether it's observed or whether it's informal feedback after a lesson. Lesson observations and feedback is really important. Consider also the quality of your written feedback. Is it useful? Is it going to really help? Is it tailored towards what that associate teacher needs at that point? So we ask them to identify their weekly targets on that lesson observation. So, you know, are they taking on that advice and feedback and actually working towards those targets within the teaching, within the planning and the teaching? What's their subject knowledge like? Is their subject knowledge secure? You know, do comment on their subject knowledge. And this is where we would like to sort of just remind you, there's those the subject lesson observation prompts that are on the website as well. So if you're observing a science lesson, go and have a look at the prompts. So it can actually help really focus what is it that that associate teacher needs to be demonstrating in their own planning and their teaching as well. And that will make really good links then back to their development journals as well. So what have they learnt that we can now see in practice? Weekly reflections, so you've got your weekly meetings, so weekly reflections, weekly conversations taking place, looking at reviewing targets and then setting new targets, using that tracker to help focus those targets and what is it specifically we want them to work on that following week. You know, I think it's really important just to make sure whatever we are feeding back to our associate teachers, and that includes us as much as our colleagues in school, is are we being really specific? Are those targets really achievable? So does that associate teacher go away knowing what it is that they need to really focus on for the following week? Pupil records, are they keeping records? Do they input into records that you do, you know, that you continue to use in school, and then using that formative assessment tracker as well? So please visit that formative assessment tracker after or during your weekly meetings, because that's going to really help identify strengths, identify areas for development for the following week, and help you to put together those really clear focused targets for the associate teacher. Right, and then quickly then impact.
Sorry, Kath.
Go on.
Sorry, Kath. Just to
Yep.
Caitlin, I know you've got your hand up, Caitlin. Sorry, and I've just spotted that. Did you want to ask a question before we move on? Did you have anything, or was it a response to the fact about whether to share their associate teacher journal? I'm sorry.
It was about the subject journal. For some reason, it hasn't cancelled itself.
Don't worry, Caitlin. Thank you so much. I thought it might be, but I thought I'd better just double check. So great, thank you.
So
Thanks,
really, sorry, did you want to say anything else? No, okay. At the end of the day, we want them to have an impact, a positive impact on the progress of learners and groups of learners within your class and across your school. So, and that will be over time. That those sequences of lessons are really going to help associate teachers see how those children will make progress over that sequence of lessons. So which aspects of teaching linked to the key themes are securing that impact? So use the key themes. Yep, you're doing that really well. That's really consistent in your practice. That is having an impact on the children and on their learning. But also, okay, what could we do now to enhance that impact? So it's then looking at the next step. Again, be led by those key themes and those descriptors within those columns, so that we can actually really focus the advice and the support that we're giving and the targets that we're setting. In, you know, always emphasising it's the impact of the strengths which is securing the pupil progress. So tell them that and let them know that, but this is going to make it even better if you do X, Y, Z. So impact on progress over time, quality of teaching, certainly think of those strengths, which aspects are securing impact, and then also which ones now need to become a focus for the next week. So how can we then strengthen that practice to enhance that impact further? And I think one of the things is use the language of those key themes to make those points and those targets really explicit to the trainee as well, so they can begin to make the links between what development we want to see and how they see that development in their practice. So Anne, time. I think we've got some discussion tasks. Do you want to do that, or do you want to move on?
I think what I'd rather do is actually ask people if they've got any questions, because there's a lot of information that we've shared. I think some of the tasks we can have a look at the you can have a look at the scenarios, but actually I think it's about really getting any feedback from yourselves about any questions you've got with regards to any certainly obviously not mentioning associate teachers, but just really regarding the paperwork and documentation. If there's anything we can help you, that's probably better use of our time now. Thank you. Do anybody like to ask any questions, or any thoughts about information, etc.? It's just great. Thank you. Is it Chloe? Hi, Chloe. Do you want to put your mic off? Sorry, Chloe. We always do the same thing. There you are, Chloe. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
So I'm I've taken over the role of the lead mentor. I'm not actually one of the mentors at the moment because they're in a different year group. Am I expected to do any observations of our students, or is it okay for their mentors to do that and I oversee?
I think that's. Are you okay for me to answer that, Kath?
Yeah.
I think we've got a number of lead mentors actually on the call today, and I know Caitlin is a lead mentor as well, and it might be to support. I mean, obviously, it depends on the experience of the mentors as well, Chloe, to see if they've had experience about giving feedback. You might want to do some QA of that yourself in the school to make sure you're confident that they understand that process. You can signpost your mentors to the subject-specific prompts, which they will be able to use if they've got access on the primary partnership website. I think that's a judgment call you would have to make. I mean, maybe if you wanted to, I would do it just part of my QA process when I was in school, just to make sure that you're having that support, you're supporting a colleague to develop that practice further. I don't know whether to put you on the spot, Caitlin, because I know I've just seen because she had a hand up. So Caitlin, you're a lead mentor in your school, and you work with mentors. How do you want to ask offer any further advice?
I'm going to have to apologise because I didn't quite hear the start of the question. You cut out, Chloe, I'm afraid. If you want to repeat the question again.
Okay.
I was just asking about whether it was expected of the lead mentor to conduct any observations if the students aren't in. So at the moment, the students that are here are in year 3 and I'm in year 4. So I'm kind of overseeing, making sure they're all right on a day-to-day basis, but not kind of stepping into class and watching while they're there.
The way I've operated it, and I know it's different in different schools, the way we've done it is I normally do one within the first couple of weeks, just so I can kind of see a baseline of it.
Okay.
And then I join in when the tutor comes in. So that joint observation is me and the tutor. So then I compare to where they've come in, because that's normally later than in the programme, to compare between the two. That's how we do it. And then I leave it weekly then to the class teachers, and I ask them to send me the observation form, just so I can see them as well, and I can quality assure them at the same time. But that's just how we work. Obviously, it's dependent on what time you can get out of class, but that's how we work it here.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Thanks,
Thank
Caitlin. I knew that, hopefully, Chloe, I knew you'd had to just, because obviously it is different in different settings, but actually that's a little bit of help. I know Caitlin works with a number of her colleagues, her mentors who are working with our class associate teachers as well. So thanks, Caitlin. Thank you both for that. Great question, Chloe. Yeah, anybody else got anything they'd like to add or share? Anything about our, as I said, the assessment today, it's being recorded. So as soon as I get that, I'll trim the video to make sure you get the pertinent content, and then that will be another way of you be able to access that in the future as well. But the presentation, can I just ask if you could you just, you probably have to scroll back into the chat. I have put the presentation into the chat bar. I just wanted to make sure, could you all open it? I think if you scroll back up, I think I put it in at about, let's have a look what time it was. Yeah, it was about, oh, I did a lot, didn't I? About just before 4 o'clock. So if you could just scroll back into the chat bar and just make sure you've got at least the presentation from tonight. I'm more than happy to send it through to you on an email, which I probably will do as well, just to make sure you've got it. But if you could just double check and give me a thumbs up if you can access it, and then at least I know that you have the content from this afternoon to help you. Brilliant. Thanks, Amy. That's great. Thank you for confirming that. But if, you know, for example, if you can't get back onto the chat bar, onto this particular link, thanks, Chloe, I'll make sure that you've got that information for you. So it's got all of the links and all the little contents I've been putting into the chat bar as well. Great. Kath, anything else to add that we've missed? I think there's a lot of content. I'm sure people would like 5 minutes back of their life to be able to go, and especially if you've been here since 3:34, which I thought was hilarious. I'm sorry, apologies for that. If you thought it was 3:34.
And I can only apologise because I just feel like I'm giving so much information out very quickly. But obviously, if you have any further questions, you know where we are, or speak to your UTs in school as well. Yeah, because they will be able to clarify things.
Perfect. So just any feedback you can give us, if you've got anything you think we've missed or have done, obviously pop that in the chat bar as well. But yeah, it's absolutely great to see you all. So thank you so much for joining today. And as I said, if there's anything further that we can do to support you, if we can't, then obviously a university tutor when they're coming into school to complete those observations next week. Probably I'm doing a lot of joint observations next week, so I suspect that a lot of you will be meeting our university tutors next week as well. So great. So thank you so much for joining today, and I will just stop the recording. So if anybody wants to add any, you know, we'll stay on the call for a little bit, but great to see you. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you all. Great to see you all. Thank you. Stop recording. Perfect. Thank you.